Dr. Han Da-won rubbed his tired eyes as he stared at the computer screen. The clock on the wall showed 2:30 a.m., but he couldn't sleep. Not after what he had seen in the deep-sea footage. "This can't be right," he muttered, playing the video again. The darkness of the East Sea filled his screen, broken only by patches of glowing blue light. But these weren't normal deep-sea creatures. The lights moved in perfect circles, then squares, then triangles. His phone buzzed. It was Dr. Kim Yuna, his research partner. "Da-won, are you still at the lab?" Her voice was excited. "I'm seeing the same patterns at my monitoring station. This isn't random." "I know," he said, leaning back in his chair. "No sea creature we know makes patterns like this. Come to the main lab. Bring your data." 30 minutes later, Yuna rushed into the lab, her research tablet in hand. Her long black hair was tied in a messy bun, and she still wore her pajamas under her lab coat. Neither of them cared about looks right now. "Look at this," she said, placing her tablet next to his computer. "I've been tracking these lights for the past week. They always appear at the same time, 2:15 a.m., and always at exactly 1,000 meters deep." Day one nodded, pulling up his own data. "The patterns are getting more complex each night. First, it was just circles, then squares. Now," he played today's footage. The lights danced across the screen, forming complex shapes that looked almost like letters. "We need to go down there," Yuna said, her eyes fixed on the screen. "The research submarine is ready. We've been saving it for something important." "This is definitely important," Da-won agreed. He checked the weather report on his computer. "The sea will be calm tomorrow night. We can launch at midnight." The next evening, they prepared the small research submarine. It was painted bright yellow and could hold 3 people. They loaded it with cameras, sensors, and enough air for 12 hours underwater. As they worked, their team's safety officer, Mr. Kang, watched with worry. "Are you sure about this? Nobody has studied these lights up close before." "That's exactly why we need to do it," Da-won said, checking the oxygen tanks one last time. "Something is trying to communicate with us. We need to know what." At exactly midnight, the submarine slipped into the dark water. Da-won sat at the controls, with Yuna managing the scientific equipment. Through the thick glass windows, they could see nothing but blackness. "Depth, 200 meters, Yuna called out. Nothing yet. 500 meters, still nothing. 800 meters. Da-won's hands were sweating on the controls. 950 meters. Suddenly, a soft blue glow appeared below them. It started as a small dot, then grew larger. More lights joined it, swirling around their submarine like curious fish. "Cameras on," Yuna whispered, though she didn't need to whisper in the submarine. The lights seemed to respond to her voice, pulsing brighter. Then something extraordinary happened. The lights began to arrange themselves in front of the submarine. They formed a perfect circle, then shifted into a square, then a triangle, just like in their videos. But this time, the shapes were bigger, clearer, and right in front of them. "They're not just copying shapes," Da-won said slowly. "They're showing us they understand geometry. Basic math. This is deliberate." As if responding to his words, the lights suddenly formed a new shape. It looked like an arrow, pointing down into the deeper water. Yuna grabbed Da-won's arm. "They want us to follow them." Day one checked their depth gauge and oxygen levels. They had enough air to go deeper. But should they? Everything they knew about marine biology said this was impossible. Sea creatures didn't make geometric shapes. They didn't invite humans to follow them. But then again, science was about discovering the impossible. "Hold on," he said, gripping the controls. "We're going down." As the submarine moved deeper into the dark water, following the arrow of lights, neither scientist knew they were about to make the greatest discovery in human history. In the depths of the East Sea, something ancient and intelligent was waiting to meet them. The mystery of bioluminescence was just beginning. The submarine's depth gauge read 1,200 meters. Da1 and Yuna sat in stunned silence as they watched the light show around them. The blue lights had led them to what looked like an underwater light theater. "Are you recording this?" Da1 asked, his voice barely a whisper. "Every camera is running," Yuna replied, checking the equipment. "But you need to see this." She pointed to one of the sensor screens. "These lights, they're giving off quantum signatures. This isn't normal bioluminescence." The lights continued their dance, now forming complex patterns that looked like flowing water. Then they changed into what appeared to be a double helix, like DNA. "We need Park Jin-ho to look at this," Yuna said, taking notes on her tablet. "These patterns remind me of what he showed us last month about quantum wave patterns." As if hearing her words, the lights suddenly formed a new shape. It looked like a mathematical equation, with symbols floating in the dark water. "Message to surface." Da1 spoke into the radio. "This is Da1. We need Dr. Park Jin-ho at the base when we return. Urgently." 4 hours later, they were back at the research station. Jin-ho arrived just as they were unloading their equipment. He was a tall, thin man who always wore the same style of blue sweater. His eyes went wide as they showed him the recordings. "Impossible," he muttered, but his fingers were already flying over his laptop keyboard. "These patterns, they're quantum interference patterns, like the ones we see in our lab experiments. But these are much more complex." He pointed to one particular sequence of lights. "Look here. This is exactly like the wave function collapse we study in quantum physics, but it's happening at a massive scale, not just with tiny particles." "What does that mean?" Da1 asked, trying to understand. Jin-ho took off his glasses and cleaned them, something he did when he was excited. "It means whatever made these lights understands quantum physics better than we do. They're not just making pretty patterns, they're showing us quantum equations." Yuna pulled up more footage on the main screen. "The patterns changed when we spoke. Could they be trying to teach us something? Or testing us?" Jin-ho said. "Like giving a child simple math problems before moving to harder ones. They started with basic shapes, then moved to more complex patterns." Just then, the station's alert system beeped. The night shift operator called down to their lab. "Dr. Han, Dr. Kim. The lights are back, but they're different tonight. You need to see this." They rushed to the monitoring room. On the big screen, the lights were forming new patterns. But this time, they weren't just geometric shapes or quantum patterns. They looked like stars, Da1 said in amazement. "They're showing us star patterns, constellations." Jin-ho leaned closer to the screen. "Not just any constellations. Look carefully. These are constellations as they would have appeared 50,000 years ago." The room went quiet. Everyone understood what this meant. Whatever was creating these lights wasn't just intelligent. It had been around for a very, very long time. "We need to go back down," Yuna said firmly. "Tonight. And this time, Jin-ho comes with us." Jin-ho looked nervous. He had never been in a submarine before, but his curiosity won over his fear. "I'll need to bring some specialized equipment. If they're really communicating through quantum patterns, maybe we can talk back." As they prepared for another dive, Da1 looked at the night sky through the station's window. The stars above looked just like the patterns they'd seen in the deep water. Had these mysterious beings been watching humanity all this time, waiting for us to be ready to understand their messages? One thing was certain. Tonight's dive would be different. This time, they weren't just going to watch. They were going to try to answer back. As Jin-ho set up his quantum measurement devices in the submarine, he smiled. "You know what's funny? Humans always thought first contact would come from the stars. But it looks like it's coming from our own oceans instead." The mystery was getting deeper, just like the waters they were about to explore. The yellow submarine descended into the dark waters once again. This time, 3 people were squeezed inside. Da1, Yuna, and Jinho. The quantum measurement equipment took up most of their remaining space. "Are you sure this will work?" Yuna asked, looking at the strange device Jinho had brought. It looked like a small black box with blue lights on its sides. "No," Jinho admitted, adjusting some settings. "But if they're using quantum patterns to communicate, this device should be able to detect and copy them." They reached 1,000 meters depth. Nothing yet. 1,100 meters. Still nothing. "Maybe they're not coming tonight," Dai-1 said, but just as the words left his mouth, the first blue lights appeared. This time, the lights seemed more curious. They swirled closer to the submarine than ever before, almost touching the glass. Jinho's device started beeping rapidly. "Look at these readings," he exclaimed. "The quantum patterns are much stronger up close. They're not just making light, they're manipulating quantum fields." Suddenly, their radio crackled to life. A new voice came through. "This is Lee Mirei. I just arrived at the base station." Mirei was a cryptographer they had called in to help. She continued, "I'm receiving your data feed. These patterns, they remind me of something." The lights were now forming complex sequences, faster than before. Mirei's voice got excited. Wait. This is like an old computer language, but using quantum states instead of binary code. Give me a few minutes." Inside the submarine, they watched as the lights continued their dance. Jinho's device recorded everything, sending the data back to Mirei at the surface. 20 minutes passed. The lights kept changing patterns. Then Mirei's voice came back, shaking with excitement. "I've got it. It's a language, but not like anything we've seen before. Each pattern is both a symbol and a mathematical equation. They've created a perfect blend of math and language." "Can you understand what they're saying?" Dai-1 asked, his heart racing. "Parts of it," Mirei replied. "The first message seems to be, 'We are the ones who shape light. We have waited long.'" Everyone in the submarine held their breath. Mirei continued translating. "Your quantum technology has finally reached the level where we can speak. We have lived in these waters since before your kind walked on land." The lights shifted again, forming new patterns. Mirei translated in real time. "We are not like you. We exist in both particle and wave forms. What you call bioluminescence is just a small part of what we are." Jinho's hands were shaking as he adjusted his equipment. "That's why the quantum readings are so strong. They're not just creating light. They are light, somehow existing as both matter and energy." The lights swirled faster, forming more complex patterns. Mirei's voice came through again. "They're saying, 'We have watched your progress. From fire to electricity to quantum computers. Now you are ready to learn.'" Yuma leaned forward, her face close to the glass. "Ask them what they want to teach us." Mirei typed something into her computer, converting their question into quantum patterns. Jinho's device transmitted it into the water. The response came quickly. The lights formed a beautiful, complex pattern that spread out all around the submarine. Mirei gasped as she translated. "Everything. We will teach you everything. About light, about energy, about the true nature of reality. But first, you must understand who we are." The lights then formed a pattern that looked like Earth, but different. It showed the planet as it was millions of years ago, with different continents and deeper oceans. "We were here when your world was young," Mirei translated. "We have been its guardians, keeping balance in the deep. Now, we need your help." As the message ended, one of the lights separated from the others and gently touched the submarine's window. Where it touched, complex equations appeared in glowing blue writing, like frost patterns on glass. Jinho stared at the equations in wonder. These could revolutionize our understanding of quantum physics. They're showing us the basic language of the universe. In that moment, deep under the East Sea, human science changed forever. The real question was, What would they learn next? 1 week had passed since their first real communication with the light beings. The research station was now buzzing with activity. The team had set up a special room they called the Light Lab, where they could communicate with their new friends from the deep. Mayray sat at her desk, surrounded by screens showing different light patterns. Dark circles under her eyes showed how little she had slept, but she couldn't stop smiling. "They've been teaching me their language," she told Daewon and Yuna as they brought her some coffee. "It's beautiful. Every pattern has 3 meanings. One in mathematics, one in physics, and one in words." Jin-Ho walked in, carrying a stack of papers covered in equations. "Look at this," he said, spreading them on the table. "These quantum formulas they gave us. They explain things we've been trying to understand for decades." Yuna picked up one of the papers. "What kind of things?" "Like how to store quantum information for more than a few seconds, how to transmit it over long distances. They've solved problems that our best scientists couldn't figure out." Just then, the lights in their underwater viewing chamber began to pulse. Everyone rushed to their stations. This was how the light beings usually started their daily teaching sessions. Mayray's fingers flew over her keyboard as she translated the incoming patterns. "They want to show us something about their history," she said. The lights formed a series of images in the water. First, they showed Earth as it was 400 million years ago. Then they showed themselves, not as lights, but as physical creatures that looked like a mix between jellyfish and squid, glowing with inner light. "They're showing us their evolution," Daewon said quietly. "Look, they used to have physical bodies, like us." The images change, showing how these creatures gradually learned to exist as both matter and energy. They could switch between physical form and pure light at will. "We learned this when the Great Death came," Mayray translated as new patterns appeared. "When rocks fell from the sky and the world turned dark." "They're talking about the asteroid that killed the dinosaurs," Jin-Ho realized. "They survived by learning to exist as light itself." The next images showed the light beings watching human history unfold. They saw early humans discovering fire, building cities, and finally developing modern technology. "We watched and waited," Mayray read. "Some wanted to contact you sooner, but others said you weren't ready. We had to wait until you understood quantum science, until you could truly understand us." Suddenly, new patterns appeared, urgent ones. Mayray's face grew serious as she translated. "They're warning us. They say, your oceans are changing. The deep waters grow warmer. The currents that keep your world in balance are shifting. We have maintained them for millions of years, but now we need your help." The patterns shifted again, showing maps of ocean currents and temperature changes. "We can exist as light, but the younger ones of our kind still need the deep cold waters to survive. If the oceans warm too much, we will lose our next generation, and without us to maintain the deep currents, your world will face great changes." Daewon stood up. "Ask them what we can do to help." Before Mayray could type the question, the lights formed new patterns. But these were interrupted by a loud alarm. Red warning lights flashed throughout the station. The intercom crackled to life. "Unknown vessels approaching. Military ships, multiple nations." The light beings' patterns became erratic, agitated. "Others have detected our energy signatures," Mayray translated quickly. "They think we are a weapon. You must tell them the truth before." The patterns stopped suddenly. The lights vanished, leaving the viewing chamber dark. Through the station's windows, they could see ships approaching on the horizon. The world had noticed their discovery. Now they had to convince everyone that the lights in the deep weren't a threat. They were humanity's oldest friends, and they needed our help. The real challenge was just beginning. Commander Choi Sung-min stood on the deck of his ship, looking at the research station through binoculars. His face was stern as he lowered them and turned to his crew. "Prepare the boarding boats," he ordered, "and get me the station director on the radio." Inside the research station, everything was chaos. Scientists ran back and forth, backing up data and hiding their most important notes. Dad 1, Yuna, Jin-Ho, and Mirai gathered in the light lab, trying to think of a plan. They can't just take over our research, Yuna said, her hands shaking as she saved files to a backup drive. The light beings trusted us. The station's radio crackled. Research Station East Sea, this is Commander Choi of the Naval Special Operations. We have detected unusual energy signatures from your location. For national security, we are taking control of this facility. Day 1 picked up the radio microphone. Commander, this is Dr. Han Da-1. Please listen. What you detected isn't a weapon. It's a first contact situation with an intelligent species. There was a long pause before the commander replied. Dr. Han, we've been monitoring your energy readings. They match quantum patterns that could be used for weapons. We can't take chances. Jin-Ho grabbed the microphone. Commander, I'm Dr. Park Jin-Ho, quantum physicist. Those patterns are a language. If you interrupt our contact, we'll lose the greatest scientific discovery in human history. You have 1 hour to prepare for our arrival, was the commander's only response. Mirai, who had been quiet, suddenly stood up. The light patterns, they're back, but they're different. Everyone rushed to the viewing window. The water was filled with more lights than they had ever seen before, but instead of their usual blue color, these were shifting through all the colors of the rainbow. They're not just in our viewing area, Yuma said, checking the station's sensors. They're surrounding the entire station and the military ships. Mirai's fingers flew over her keyboard as she translated. They're saying, we will show them we are not a threat. We will show them who we are. Outside, the light show was getting bigger. The military ships were now surrounded by beautiful patterns of light that danced across the waves. On every ship's deck, sailors stopped what they were doing and stared in wonder. Commander Choi watched as the lights formed images above his ship. They showed scenes from Earth's history, the same ones the beings had shown the scientists. But this time, they added more. They showed how they had helped maintain ocean currents during major climate changes, how they had guided whales away from dangerous waters, how they had watched over Earth's oceans for millions of years. The commander's radio crackled again, but this time it was his superior officer. Choi, are you seeing this? It's happening everywhere. Every naval base along the coast is reporting the same light show. This is bigger than us. Day 1's team watched as the military ships slowly lowered their weapons. The light beings had found the perfect way to prove they weren't dangerous. They had shown their role as Earth's guardians to everyone at once. Commander Choi's voice came over the radio again, but this time it was different. Softer. Dr. Han, I think we need to talk. Face to face. They knew exactly what to do, Mirai said, smiling as she translated more patterns. They're saying they've watched humans for so long. They knew only a big display would work, something everyone could see and understand. Yuna looked at the beautiful lights still dancing around the ships. So what happens now? New patterns formed in their viewing chamber. Mirai translated. Now we can begin the real work. Together. The crisis wasn't completely over, but the light beings had turned a dangerous situation into a chance for understanding. As Commander Choi's boat headed toward the research station, the lights followed it, turning the dark water into a path of hope. The world was about to change forever, one light at a time. Commander Choi sat in the research station's meeting room, staring at the video recordings in amazement. For the past 2 hours, Da-1's team had been showing him everything they had learned about the light beings. So they've been here all along, he said quietly. Protecting our oceans for millions of years. Yes, Yuna replied. And now they need our help. The door opened, and Oh Jae-yeon walked in. She was a diplomatic advisor the government had sent after hearing about the light beings. Unlike most government officials, she had a kind face and a practical approach to unusual situations. The other nations have agreed to a joint meeting, Jae-yeon announced. They all saw the light show. Now they want to know more. Myre's computer beeped. New light patterns were appearing in the viewing chamber. She quickly translated them. "They're saying they can help us," she said. "Their understanding of quantum physics could solve our energy problems. Clean power, better ways to store energy, new types of computers." Jin-Ho nodded excitedly. "The quantum formulas they've shown us, they're decades ahead of our best research, maybe even centuries." Commander Choi frowned. "But why help us now? Why not earlier?" New patterns formed in the water. Myre read them. "Your world stands at a turning point. The oceans grow warmer. The ice melts. The currents change. We can no longer maintain the balance alone." Jae-yun leaned forward. "Ask them what exactly they need from us." The lights swirled into new patterns. This time, they formed detailed images of ocean currents and temperature maps. "We need your help to cool the deep waters," Myre translated. "Our young ones need the cold to survive. In return, we will share all our knowledge." "The deep ocean currents affect everything," Yuna explained to the others. "Weather patterns, fish migration, even the air we breathe. If they fail, then we all suffer," Jae-yun finished. She stood up and straightened her jacket. "I can work with this. Clean energy technology in exchange for helping save the oceans. Every nation will want to be part of that." Commander Choi looked at the lights still dancing in the viewing chamber. "I'll speak to my superiors. The Navy can help protect this site, make sure the research continues safely." Just then, the light patterns changed dramatically. They showed a new image, a design for some kind of building. "A place where we can work together," Myre translated. "Half in water, half in air, where your kind and ours can meet and share knowledge." Jae-yun smiled. "A joint research facility. Perfect. That's exactly the kind of project that can bring nations together." The next few hours were busy. Jae-yun made calls to government officials. Commander Choi arranged for his ships to protect the research zone. The scientists kept working with the light beings, learning more about their technology and history. As the sun set, Da-won stood at the window, watching the lights dance in the deep water. Yuna joined him. "Did you ever think we'd be here?" she asked, "working with ancient light beings to save the world." Da-won shook his head. "I just wanted to study unusual bioluminescence. Instead, we found humanity's oldest allies." The lights outside formed a simple pattern, one they had learned to recognize. It meant hope. In the background, they could hear Jae-yun on the phone, arranging the international meeting. Commander Choi was looking at maps, planning security zones. Jin-Ho and Myre were working on translating more quantum formulas. Everyone had found their role in this new chapter of human history. The light beings had shown them that different kinds of people, scientists, soldiers, diplomats, could work together when they understood what was really important. As night fell, the lights in the water grew brighter, like stars in the deep. Tomorrow would bring new challenges, but for now, they had done what seemed impossible. They had built a bridge between two very different worlds. And this was just the beginning. 1 month after the first contact, the research station had grown. New buildings stood on the shore, and underwater viewing chambers reached deeper into the sea. Scientists from many countries worked together, learning from the light beings. Today was special. The light beings had promised to show them something important, their true purpose on Earth. Da-won, Yuna, and their team gathered in the largest viewing chamber. The room was filled with advanced equipment, much of it built using the light beings' quantum technology. Myre sat at her translation station, ready to interpret. "They're coming," Jin-Ho said, pointing at his quantum sensors. "But something's different. The readings are stronger than ever." The water outside turned bright blue, then pure white. The light was so bright that everyone had to shield their eyes. When they looked again, they gasped. Instead of their usual light patterns, the beings had taken physical form. They looked like giant jellyfish made of crystal and light, their bodies transparent and glowing. Tendrils of pure energy flowed around them. Now you will see us as we truly are. Mirai translated their patterns. We are the guardians of the deep. The creatures began to show them images, but these were clearer than ever before. They showed the Earth's oceans as a complex network of currents, like blood vessels in a giant body. For millions of years, we have maintained these currents. Mirai read. They are the heartbeat of your world. When they flow properly, they carry heat, nutrients, and life itself around the planet. The images change, showing the light beings at work. They use their control over quantum energy to guide massive ocean currents, help marine animals migrate, and keep deep-sea volcanoes from causing too much damage. We are not just observers, the translation continued. We are caretakers. Every fish that swims, every wave that breaks, every tide that turns, we help keep it all in balance. Commander Choi, who had become a regular visitor, watched in amazement. All this time, we thought we were alone in protecting Earth's oceans, but we were just the latest helpers. The light beings showed more images. They revealed vast gardens of glowing coral in the deepest parts of the ocean, places no human had ever seen. These gardens helped clean the water and provided homes for countless species. But now our gardens are dying. Mirai translated, her voice sad. The warm waters kill them. Without them, the balance fails. Jai-yun stepped forward. The International Council meets tomorrow. What do you want us to tell them? The light beings formed new patterns, which showed a plan. They could teach humans how to use quantum energy to cool specific parts of the ocean. This would save the deep-sea gardens and help fix the currents. In return, they would share all their knowledge about clean energy and ocean protection. We have watched humans grow. The translation continued. You make mistakes, but you also learn. You fight, but you also come together. Now is the time for coming together. Yuna looked at the team around her. Scientists from different countries worked side by side. The Navy protected them. Diplomats helped them, all because they found a common goal, saving their shared home. There is one more truth you must know. Mirai translated as new patterns formed. We are not the only guardians. Other beings watch over the land, the air, the ice. When you are ready, you will meet them too. Everyone in the room stood silent, taking in this news. Earth had more secrets, more helpers, more wonders to discover. So we're not alone, Daiwan said quietly. We were never alone. The light beings pulsed in agreement. Their final message was simple. Now you are guardians too. Let us work together to protect this beautiful world. Outside the viewing chamber, the ocean seemed different now. It wasn't just water anymore. It was a living system, full of wonders and secrets waiting to be understood. And humans were finally ready to help protect it. 6 months had passed since the light beings revealed their true purpose. The small research station had grown into something amazing. The International Deep Ocean Research Center. The building was like nothing else on Earth, half on land and half under the sea. Day one stood in his favorite spot, an underwater viewing room shaped like a glass bubble. He watched as young light beings played with a group of whales, their bodies glowing with happy blue and green colors. Still your favorite morning routine? Yuna asked as she joined him. She handed him a cup of coffee. Every morning is different, he replied. Yesterday they were teaching young whales how to find food. Today they're just playing. The intercom buzzed. Dr. Han, Dr. Kim, Mirai's voice called. The quantum cooling system is ready for its first test. They hurried to the control room. The new cooling system was their biggest project, a way to help the light beings save their deep-sea gardens. Jin-Ho was already there, checking data on his screens. The light beings are in position, he said. They'll guide the quantum energy while we power the system. Commander Choi and Jai-yun were there too. The commander now led the center's security team, while Jai-yun managed relations with governments around the world. All observation posts are ready, the commander reported. We're about to make history. Myray's translation screen lit up with patterns from the light beings. We begin now. Watch closely. Jinho pressed a button, and the cooling system hummed to life. On the big screen, they could see what was happening deep underwater. The light beings spread out around a dying coral garden, their bodies glowing with intense blue light. The quantum cooling system sent waves of energy into the deep water. The light beings caught this energy and shaped it, like artists molding clay. They turned it into a gentle, cool current that flowed through the coral garden. Look, Yuna pointed at the temperature readings. The water temperature is dropping to exactly where it needs to be. Through the cameras, they watched as the dying coral began to glow again. The light beings had said it would happen, but seeing it was different. The coral's natural light mixed with the light beings' glow, turning the deep sea into a festival of colors. The garden accepts the cool waters. Myray translated. It will live and grow. We can save the others the same way. Jaeyun was already on her phone, calling the International Council. It works, she said excitedly. We can start building more cooling systems right away. The light beings weren't finished. They gathered in front of the main viewing window and began to glow with all the colors of the rainbow. Myray translated their message. This is only the beginning. Together, we will do more than save gardens. We will explore the deep places of Earth. We will learn from each other. We will prepare for the day when you meet the other guardians. The commander smiled. From thinking you were a threat to working together to save the planet. Times really change. Speaking of change, Jinho said, checking his quantum readings, the light beings' quantum formulas have helped us build better solar panels and energy storage. Clean energy is spreading faster than ever. Daewon looked around the control room. Humans and light beings working together, sharing knowledge, solving problems. It was more than he could have dreamed when he first saw those strange lights in the deep. Your kind asks many questions. Myray translated as new patterns appeared. You want to learn everything at once. This is good. Curiosity brought us together. Wisdom will keep us together. Yuna touched the glass of the viewing window. A young light beam on the other side matched her hand with one of its glowing tendrils. So what's next? She asked. The patterns shifted one last time. Myray smiled as she read them. Next, we explore together. There are more wonders in the deep than either of our kinds has yet discovered. Shall we begin? The mystery of bioluminescence had led them to something greater than they could have imagined. A partnership between two very different species, working together to protect their shared home. As the coral garden glowed in the deep, it was a sign of hope, not just for the oceans, but for all of Earth's future. The end was really just another beginning.